The vision for the Garden of Life is a result of my talks with locals. So their hopes are our hopes, and our hopes are even bigger.
I've been here for more than 16 years, 17 years. I think one of the things that makes Bali very special is that the culture is being kept very, very close to them and very, very alive. And what I understand also from my research on ancient cultures, Balinese culture is heavily influenced by Hinduism, right? And the Vedic culture is one of the most ancient cultures in the world. So they actually have kept very intact some of these sacred science that we are talking about and we are using in bioarchitecture. So when you see actually the temples that they build and how they build them and the places where they build them, they carry this ancient knowledge. And what, to my mind, as a bioarchitect, I understand that they are doing here in temple design and temple building is they're creating an energetic network that is spread throughout the entire island. And to my mind, bringing temple design into modern science is that this network has an effect in the island. It's a harmonizing network. It creates a harmonic field effect. So this is actually something that in Balinese culture is very, very well known. It's like the idea of creating harmony. Harmony amongst human beings, harmony amongst men and the spiritual realm and God, and harmony amongst men and nature. So that's the philosophy of Tritakarana. And so the idea of bioarchitecture is very connected to Tritakarana on the sense that we decode how these Tritakarana can be implemented in the practice of architecture and design. The island and the culture already have a way of being, a way of doing things, and the way they were building the architecture was very connected to nature. So by creating cities and developments that are not in line with these principles, we basically creating a field of, instead of harmony, of disharmony. And then this will affect everyone's life. We have situations like what happened in the south of Bali, which has been totally overdeveloped, and all these principles have been forgotten. So this is just one example, but this is what's happening all over the planet, right? Like, develop the land, pretty much forgetting their origins and how they were doing the things they were doing, when these principles are totally forgotten and architecture is just done, created regardless of this knowledge. There is always an evolution. There's something, so much to learn from these old traditions, but there is always a new interpretation. So bioarchitecture is about creating healing environments, really. Like, in essence, that's the goal. Creating buildings that heal. In order to understand why an architectural environment or a space is healthy, we need to understand the electrical nature of the human body. The cells have a voltage, minus 25 millivolts. What's happened when the body is trying to heal? When the body is trying to heal, the cells create more voltage. What's happened if the body cannot create that voltage is that you fall into disease, you fall into chronic pain. There are many reasons why the body cannot create that correct electrical potential in order to regenerate the cells. There can be many causes. They can be emotional, they can be toxicity, but it can also be environmental. So concrete, when it's produced, they produce concrete by heating lime to very high temperatures. So that creates a missing stable isotope that makes concrete electropositive, meaning it's an electron stealer. So actually concrete absorbs electrons from its environment. If you put a battery on the top of a concrete slab, it will discharge faster. So concrete by definition and by its nature and how it's produced, is not just sometimes toxic because it's mixed with certain chemicals that also have toxicity for the human body, but electrically, energetically, is also an electron stealer. There is a very fundamental idea in bioarchitecture, which is that we trying to harness the Schumann harmonic frequencies from the earth, and the building should store and radiate those harmonics. Why? Because this is what nature does. This is what trees do. Trees are natural dielectric antennas that tap into the Schumann harmonics. So if you spectrum analyze the weak electric field of a tree, you will measure the Schumann harmonic cascade. And then so Philip Callahan, when he was doing these studies, he realized that that you could measure the Schumann harmonics in living trees, but you could also measure them in houses. So it turns out that people that were living in these houses that he measured, they were living for very long periods of time. So we also have this in Balinese culture, where actually it's well known that Balinese were living for very long lives and very healthy lives. And they were also living in sort of bioarchitect houses. In Balinese tradition, and what I believe is the origins of Balinese architectural sacred design, when you build a house for a person, you will take the measurements of the person, and then you will use those measurements to create the geometry of the house. You're creating a resonant relationship with the human form, but also you're creating a system of harmony. So a house is like a harmonic device. If that house is proportional and is harmonious and is based on sacred geometry, then you create an environment that have a beneficial energy to the human form. It's in resonance with it. You can also look at more advanced sacred geometric principles, which you can see in all over the natural world, and then interpret those geometric patterns and use those patterns and those geometries to generate the shape of the building. So if the environment around you taking electrons from your body, because it's designed with certain materials and because it has certain shapes, then that environment is actually taking energy out of your system. In the long term, will have health hazards, you will have health consequences. On the other hand, you can create an environment that is an electron donor. If you don't address the energetic factor in architecture, then the environment around you is creating all sorts of problems, but they are the root cause. So this is something that modern architects do not take into account and do not understand very well. And we need to bring this to the table, and really, like, architects should study electromagnetic field theory, so they can design buildings which are biocompatible. They're actually not just compatible to the human body, but they're actually enhancing the human biology to achieve a state of wellness and health. With the Garden of Life, we are applying also the same principles, but also in my particular interpretation for this project, the idea will be to emphasize the regenerative effects that architecture could have upon its environment. It's creating a garden that is blossoming with life. So in Garden of Life, we are trying to incorporate the principles of bioarchitecture and to prove that architecture could potentially become regenerative, and it could have an effect upon its environment, and could actually create a more fertile environment that will allow plant life and growth to actually be generated. And then we could demonstrate how architecture could be regenerative. So we can be sustainable and create minimal footprints, and use sustainable materials, but also we can create a design where everything around its environment is actually growing better. Everything is happening because of the entire design is incorporating these harmonic principles. So all our designs in Garden of Life are very deeply taking into account these bioenergetic designs, because we are trying to optimize energetically every design to achieve this effect, these regenerative effects. That also they affect the people who live in these spaces or who are going to spend periods of time. They will have an experience. It will affect their experience. It will create certain regenerative and healing effects, which this is also it's a healing center. So we want to achieve that. But because it's a Garden of Life, we would like to experiment and explore the idea that architecture could be regenerative. We would like to prove that in an actual project. And this is why we are implementing these concepts and these ideas into the Garden of Life. We believe that Bali is doing this, even if they forgot what they were doing it in the first place. But the sciences and the culture is actually is a testament of this ancient wisdom that they still have and they still conserve, because this is why the culture in Bali is very rich and they kept it very intact. And then we are taking those principles and we are reinterpreting them, understanding them, and then implementing them in our designs and our projects, and reinventing architecture, incorporating some of these ancient practices and wisdom. And this is one of the main goals of bioarchitecture, one of the main mission of our company, of BioArch.
Saya kerja untuk saat ini sampai ke depan hanya untuk BioArch. Kalau saya punya kerjaan, saya rekrut banyak teman, banyak warga untuk kerja bergabung bersama saya. Apalagi proyek yang menjanjikan dari BioArch yang di Penebel Tabanan, mungkin saja saya bisa merekrut 25 orang nanti untuk kerja bersama saya untuk di Tabanan.
Much of the time, the industry is focused just pretty much only on what is the cheapest thing to do. At BioArch, the cheapness isn't the number one. We actually want to make buildings that lead to thriving life.